Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness here. Today I want to talk to you guys briefly about myths about calories in versus calories out. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. Now, I'm going to discuss this just in brief detail, and I do get a little sick when people ask me to cite references and studies. Guys, I put out like 2 videos a day. If I sat around pulling references for you guys when only 1% of my subscribers cares about it, I would never have time to actually make the videos I make. I'm not PubMed, I'm not Google Scholar. If you know how to read a study, you can easily pull this material yourself off there. If you're really interested in people who discuss these same topics and will give you 100,000 pages of material to read on references for it, I suggest you go check out Alan Aragon or Lyle McDonald. For me, it would interfere with me actually putting out videos and answering questions if I spent 15 hours a day listing all the references and research. So put that in perspective, guys. I've told you how to find it. Those 2 guys can give you your stuff, or you can learn to use PubMed or Google Scholar and find all the literature on all these topics. Now, something that keeps coming up is people try to say, gurus, experts, other people, that it is possible for healthy individuals to not lose weight when in a caloric deficit or not gain weight when in a surplus. Now I want to address that. First, let's start with the surplus. Generally, if you're not gaining weight in a caloric surplus, you have one of several medical conditions and you need to go see a doctor and get on medications, because gaining muscle and weight is the least of your worries at that point. You're going to probably die or hurt yourself if you don't get medical help. So your muscle gains are your lowest priority at that point. So if you're sure you keep increasing calories and you're not gaining weight, you're probably a type 1 diabetic, or you have a major issue with hyperthyroidism. Either way, you need to be seeing a doctor immediately. Your life is in danger. Now, for most others, it's an issue of they underreport, they have a low appetite, they make the mistake of trying to eat too clean or too bro, and they actually struggle to eat enough calories to eat enough. They do too much activity. They're simply not in a caloric surplus, or they eat heavy for a day or 2 and then they feel so stuffed they forget to eat correctly for a few days and end up being in a deficit. They end up not really being in a surplus. That is almost always the case. I've seen this over and over and over. If you're in a true caloric surplus, you don't have one of the medical issues I just listed, particularly the type 1 diabetes, it is biologically impossible for you not to eventually start gaining body weight, whether it's fat, muscle, or water. It's simply going to happen. Now, the other one, and this one gets debated a lot, and it's people want to talk a lot about metabolic damage, metabolic adaptation, and I'm just going to state right up front, for the record, yes, it exists. It is not anywhere near as extreme as many in the industry would have you believe, and even several people with scientific backgrounds in this area have said in debates that they do not have actual research and data to back their stance on this. I've seen multiple ones do this, and there is plenty of data to the contrary to show the other extreme. And what also isn't being addressed is the psychological data. People are looking at purely the studies on physiology. And yes, there is adaptation, but it is nowhere near extreme as people think. You're not going to change your resting metabolic rate by 1,000 calories a day through poor diet, starvation, thyroid downregulation, things like that. You're not going to be able to do it that much. You're going to be able to get a few hundred calories, absolutely. Either direction, up or down. It is generally psychological that is the cause. And what you find is that, and we know this, all the research supports this, that as caloric intake goes down, people become less active, they fidget less, they will exercise less, they will put out less effort in their exercise. So that same hour-long cardio session, they might have been burning 600 calories at one point. They're going to pedal slower or jog slower, and they're going to burn 400 or 500 calories. So you need to be aware of that and watch for that. People are going to fidget less. They're going to burn 100, 200 less calories just from less fidgeting. They're going to want to lay around and not walk or get up and do things and be less active. They're going to lose a lot of calories through being more sedentary without realizing it. And once you are aware of that, and you're aware of that psychological tendency, you can force yourself to just be more active than you would have been had you just left it alone and you thought you were doing the same level of activity. You really did. And this is where people report the anecdote. They don't realize that this is documented, that people do this, that they will burn 300, 400, maybe even up to 500 less calories per day while thinking they are doing the same amount of activity. And their coaches and their trainers are not aware of this difference in their activity. It can literally be that high due to change in activity. And it's the same with the diet end. When people start feeling the strain of a diet and discipline starts to break down, people will get a little more heavy-handed with the measuring. They might think they're eating 1,800 calories or 1,500 calories, but they're actually eating up to 2,000 for a number of reasons. They're getting more heavy-handed with the measuring. They'll take that one bite. Normally they might take that one little bite of a sweet or a treat and throw it away. And they might get away with that and not count those calories, or they count that little extra treat as 20 or 25 or 50 calories, and it's actually 200, 250, 300 sometimes. They don't report it, and in their own mind they didn't eat it. And we've observed people in studies, when they're observed and cameras and things are set up, people will start under-reporting what they're eating and honestly and really truly believe that they're being honest, but they're not. And so you have these other psychological factors to consider of people misreporting their intake, misreporting their caloric expenditure when they really and truly believe that they are doing that. And so their numbers are changing, but what they're reporting on paper and even reporting to their coaches isn't. And they suddenly see a weight loss stall. And the reality is, if you're truly in a deficit, and we're doing what a lot of these people are reporting sometimes, they are still losing tissue weight oftentimes also. And people think they've hit a stall for 3 weeks because their weight hasn't changed, and they've actually lost 2 or 3 pounds, even though they're doing all this cardio and all of this tight dieting, and they actually are in a deficit, and they're seeing no change on the scale for 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes. But it is because your body will tend to compensate by holding on to fluid. And they've actually probably lost both muscle if they're dieting way too hard and too moronically, or they're losing fat for sure also, but they're retaining extra water, and eventually their body will catch up and they're going to drop 4 or 5 pounds in one day at some point eventually. But it's the body holding on to that extra fluid while it's trying to reach homeostasis and all of this. So you have all of these factors to consider, and the reality is, if you are truly in a caloric deficit or in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain and lose weight accordingly eventually once water stabilizes. And while yes, metabolic adaptations do exist, they are not as large as they have been made out to be. You're not going to be able to increase your metabolism by 1,000 calories or decrease it by 1,000 calories through your diet and lifestyle and restrictions, other than gaining massive amounts of muscle mass, probably while using anabolic drugs. Anything short of that, you're not really going to be able to make that dramatic of a change in it. It's going to be your activity and your perceived intake of your calories that's going to really matter. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.